Students, welcome back to American Government. Today, we are going to be looking at why it is so difficult for the people in this building behind me to pass laws. Why there are so many roadblocks, why it's difficult, and if it is good or bad that it is so dang difficult to pass these laws. So let's get to the assignment called Passing Laws is Hard. And this is not in the form of a question. This is a direct statement because I really want you to say this out loud, and I want you to really think of it in this way, because in terms of every metric I know, it is true, okay? So passing laws is hard. So here are the directions. Here are our plans for today. Highlighted text indicates you need to write and submit information to this assignment. Ensure you've completed all requirements in the what to submit section near the bottom. Participation will be rewarded for participating in class discussion if we ultimately do this lesson together. So take a look at these images and let's look at them as a class. So we have Donder and Blitzes is what this is called. We have the House and Senate. And we have two reindeer kind of like not happy with each other. Look at this stare from the one. That's hilarious. They kind of got their tusks like in a, like kind of locked in with one another. And so they're obviously going against one another, right? So there's kind of disagreement between these two. In the back, we have the big old present, which is the legislative program. And legislate means to make laws in the legislative program. A lot of the laws, actually the ideas for the laws come from the president, even though the president is in the executive branch and they're responsible for enforcing the laws. Whenever they make their State of the Union speech and throughout the year and with their contact with members of the legislative branch of Congress, they try to get a lot of their ideas introduced into legislation, even though the actual process does not go through the president. And here we have Jimmy Carter. And so as far as I can tell, so one of our presidents, this would be about, oh my goodness, 40 or 50 years ago, now that he would have been president. And he made a lot of promises, and the idea behind this political cartoon is he made a lot of promises whenever he did not have the support of his reindeer or the House and the Senate in terms of what he was trying to get them to pass. So if you don't got your reindeers ready to go, if they're fighting, you're not going to get your programs through. And if the president's not getting what he wants through, then that's going to look badly for him in the next election, right? And we'll get to more of that with the executive branch and what their responsibilities are. But right now, we're really focused on the reindeer in this picture, right? The House and Senate and their role in making sure these legislative programs do or do not happen. Okay, here's a really different kind of graphic. And it's kind of all the introduced bills, and this is a little bit harder to see. In gray are the introduced bills in the House of Representatives and Senate. And the amount that became law. So yeah, like all the way back insofar as Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter, and this is going to Reagan, and it's all the way up to Trump's first term. We see that we have in entire terms of the presidency, we have thousands of bills being introduced, but an extremely low number of them actually becoming law. Like, look at the difference. All you need to like just burn this into your mind, like how crazy it is that like the difference between the two is, right? Like, oh my goodness, like there were so many proposed bills that did not get ultimately passed to become a law. And it's getting lower, like it's so low over here, even though the amount that are introduced are lower. And just the fact that the likelihood that if you introduce a bill, it's not going to go through deters people from actually wanting to propose legislation, even if it's for a good purpose. The process really deters people from wanting to introduce legislation, which is a part of that built-in process. Like things have to be perfect for the perfect time, for the perfect people. You have to get the perfect circumstances on your side. Right. So during the past 45 years, an average of 11,000 bills were introduced in each Congress, and less than 5% become law. Okay, so for every 20 bills like attempted to be legislated, only 5 would become, or only 1 out of like 20 would become laws, which is a low figure. That is a low figure. Okay, and each bill usually is like hundreds, if not like thousands of pages too. So that's not like easy work either. It's not just like writing a few sentences down on a piece of paper. It's hundreds or thousands of pages of documents. Wow. Okay, step 2. So we're going to watch the video below. It's only about 3 minutes. I want you to identify and submit 3 reasons why passing bills is so difficult.
When we were young, we would watch Saturday morning cartoons and learn about how bills were passed and how they made it, how they had to be passed by the House and then passed by the Senate. I'm just a bill and I'm here on a hill. It's a lovely presentation of how laws actually get enacted, both on a state level and on a federal level. Although it made us smile at the time, anyone who's actually participated in the process knows that sometimes there's nothing to smile about at all. It can be exceedingly difficult just to get the attention of your local school board to pass a particular policy, and maybe the local zoning commission, even harder to get the attention of your state government. And when we're talking about the federal government, now you're dealing with just an enormous institution.
So that's one reason, right? Why like so many people are trying to get these people's attentions, but they have to represent so many constituents or so many different individuals from the United States that it can be hard to just get into contact with them, getting the will of the people through.
That has so many different committees writing so many different reports. Getting their attention is difficult enough, but then you've got to get their attention to the point of actually getting a majority of them to pass a particular bill. Then it has to go to the other house. They may have a similar bill, but then you're going to have to reconcile the 2 bills. Then it's going to go.
For a bill to become law, it has to come out of both the House and Senate the exact same. So you might have different people with different perspectives wanting to add different clauses to each version of the bill. Ultimately, they have to be the exact same if they want to be passed.
To the president, maybe the president's going to support it, maybe the president's going to veto it. And then after all of that, if it ultimately gets enacted, it's going to have to face adjudication. And you might have the courts invalidating part of it or invalidating all of it. And Congress then would have to go back to the drawing board. Each one of these hurdles is a gate against legislation, something which actually makes it fairly difficult for legislation to be passed. And from one perspective, that can be a problem. There might be some kind of pressing issue that actually requires some type of immediate attention. And it can take some time to go through the arduous process of passing a bill on a state level, even more arduous, of course, to go through checks and balances on the federal level. But of course, it drives a conversation by making it something that has to be announced in one house and then passed by the coordinate house of government. You're giving the opposition time to coordinate their opposition, to craft arguments against this particular policy, whether it involved anything from military bills to healthcare. That forces the promoters to do their homework, to actually come up with reasonable constitutional arguments, to make sure that whatever they're announcing is something to be put into operation, is something that can work.
And if we have thousands of bills going through, what is the likelihood of these people in the House of Representatives and Senate willing to do? How much work are they willing to do for just one bill? You can be spread too thin when you're at that level.
And actually advance that particular policy. This arduous task of forced deliberation on both a committee level, which is not required by the Constitution, but which has been created by the houses of government themselves, and then, of course, deliberation in the chambers of both the House and the Senate, which is required by the Constitution. That forces careful lawmaking. It forces everyone to take their jobs seriously, and it makes it more likely that these bills will be workable and constitutional.
The guy in that video, from my impression, he seems to think it's a good idea that it's so difficult why bills are passed. And I want you to identify and submit 3 reasons why it's difficult for them to be passed. But I also want you to go a step further and think about if it really is a good thing that that is the case, because it is. And so move on to step 3. I want you to answer this prompt. Is it good or bad for democracy that bills are so difficult to pass? Why or why not? Your response must be 2 to 3 paragraphs long, have a clear thesis or central argument, and include 2 details from the video above. Or you can also use these 2 pictures up here if you're able to tease out some details from those that you can use in your response. And then what you submit is your 3 reasons from step 2 and your response to step 3. And we're going to continue with this process. You all are going to be soon crafting bills for me that might ultimately become laws. So be on the lookout for that here pretty soon. Otherwise, if there's anything I can do to help you, please feel free to ask me. You know where to reach me. And with that, have a wonderful day.